Hey guys, and welcome back. So I kind of want to just take a moment of silence before I begin this video because it's a very sensitive topic. As you all know, we have lost a very important figure in the black community on March 31st, just less than a week ago. And I think it took a lot of us by surprise because we didn't see this one coming. We didn't see this one coming. And I actually wanted to do a video on this the same day and even a few days after, but I decided to wait for a number of reasons. This week actually has been a pretty busy week for me because I actually just started a new practicum as a doctoral psychology student in training at a hospital this week. So my week has been pretty busy. I didn't really anticipate on starting this soon, but I started soon. And it's just been a kind of a tumultuous week for me, as it has been for many black people across the nation. Not just black people, but even Hispanics are affected by this. White people who knew Nipsey are affected by this, and it's just a really tragic loss that we are all experiencing. Whether we knew this brother or not, it's still a tragic loss. And I want to speak to the response. I'm going to talk about, the murder and what happened, but I kind of want to speak more to the response of three different leaders in the African American community: Dr. Umar Johnson, Brother Polight, and Tariq Nasheed. And I find their responses to be very alarming and interesting, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. And I have to take my time with this video because I am very much impacted by the loss of Nipsey. Even though I did not know him personally, it hit very close to home. Like, I live in the exact same neighborhood where he was murdered. I live and I've done work in that neighborhood. I mean, just pretty much right across the street. I didn't even know. There's a high school that's across the street from the Marathon clothing store that I actually just finished doing needs assessment with the high school teachers there. And everybody, like, before I moved to this side of LA, everybody was telling me that, oh, it's dangerous, be careful. But of course I got that same warning when I moved to Hollywood, So when I moved to LA in 2016, I moved to Hollywood. I was living there for 2.5 years, and then in September I left Hollywood, and I now live in South Central LA, which I myself consider to be a very safe neighborhood. It's predominantly African American. It's residential. It's homes, that I am surrounded by, and for the most part, it's working, middle class African American people that I live amongst. So all of these warnings and say, oh, it's dangerous, you got to be careful, I didn't really take heed to it, and I kind of still don't, because I feel like a lot of it is just a stereotype. And I want you guys to feel free to comment, share your thoughts on this topic, as it relates to Nipsey's murder. And if you guys have seen Dr. Umar Johnson's response video, or Brother Polight or Tariq Nasheed, I want you guys to feel free to comment on what you guys think about that. But I consider where I live to be pretty safe. So, like I was saying, directly across the street from the Marathon clothing store, there's a high school there, and I've done some needs assessment with the teachers. I just finished 2 focus groups that I led with the teachers there, and I was shocked to hear how close it was. I was shocked to see that that Marathon clothing store was owned by Nipsey, which I did not know, and that I have been through that same parking lot. Actually, recently, not even, 2 weeks ago, I was dropped off right there in that same parking lot, and I was headed to the Fat Burger to grab some lunch before I headed over to the high school to do my needs assessment with the teachers. No idea. No idea that I was walking through the parking lot where Nipsey's clothing store was. I think a lot of people probably didn't know. A lot of people, of course, do know that that's his store, but a lot of people, I'm sure, did not know. And that's the thing about LA, is that it's filled with a lot of celebrities. They're scattered all over Hollywood. They are everywhere throughout the metropolitan area of Los Angeles. Tate, feel free to share your thoughts on what you think about those videos that Dr. Umar Johnson and Brother Polight and Tariq Nasheed made. So, I actually, like I said, live in the same neighborhood, not even 2 miles down the street. I live in that same neighborhood, and actually that same day, March 31st, that same time, I was literally like 1 mile down the street, down Crenshaw Boulevard, and I was hanging out at the park. And a lot of you guys know this park, Leimert Park. A lot of black people go there to hang out, to celebrate African culture. And I was, amongst other African American people out there, even Africans, who were playing the drums. I went live that same time. I had no clue that what was happening, that had happened at the same time that I went live. I was just like, I checked the time that I went live, and I was like, wow, I went live literally at the same time that he was shot and killed. And I was literally like 1 mile down the street on Crenshaw Boulevard. So it really hit close to home to me. And as I was seeing this story kind of unfolded on the news, which I'm going to talk about that whole perspective when the news, they have their little spin to it, where the following day there was a vigil in his parking lot, in that same parking lot where he was shot and killed, and this chaos had broke out. And being that I live in the same neighborhood, I can hear helicopters flying over. It was just a lot of noise. But what really impacted me, I think, the most is the story that has been developing on what actually happened. It's a lot of, he say, she say. A lot of people are just going based on speculation. And it's like no one really has the truth. Like, the truth is not out. That's the main issue. People are just going, a lot of people are just going based on what the news media is saying, which they, I think, have concocted a story, to fit the narrative that they want to portray. It's not the complete story. It's not the complete truth. So, a couple days after that happened, I was really encouraged to see that Tariq Nasheed, I think he was the first person, like, in terms of leaders in our community, that actually spoke out about what happened. And it was very refreshing to hear what he had to say. He actually was on site where Nipsey got shot and killed. He was there. He did a video. And I like what he said. I like what he's been saying in response to Nipsey's murder, because I'm like, someone has to be the voice of reason. Someone has to stand up for the black community when no one else has a voice for this victim. Someone has to stand up. And what is most ironic is that we all know Nipsey was in the process of creating a documentary in honor of Dr. Sebi and other things that he wanted to bring awareness to. And what really stood out to me was a quote that Nipsey said as he was preparing to make this documentary. He said that he want us to ride. He was like, if they kill me for making this documentary, I want y'all to ride for me. And this is the thing that people are laughing, people are making fun of and making jokes and making light of what he said. People are making light of the connection between the documentary and his murder, to say that there's no connection, that people are just making things up and thinking irrationally and have their conspiracy theories. But how? When Nipsey himself predicted his own death, he predicted his own murder. And also it was ironic that not even an hour before he was shot and killed, that he took to his Twitter page and made a tweet to say that having strong enemies is a blessing. And then not even an hour later, he was shot and killed. Interesting. But shout out to Tariq Nasheed, number one, for breaking the silence, for being so bold and courageous to step out and to speak the truth, not just his truth. Because everybody, of course, we all have our perspectives on what happened and our interpretation of why it happened. But I think that it is, what he spoke was truth, because we have to look at this thing through a systemic lens. It's always bigger than what we see on the surface. It's almost disheartening that people can just reduce it to gang violence when we know it's much bigger than that. So I can appreciate to account the social influences of the greater context in which we live in. We cannot look at this killing as an isolated event that just took place between two gang members. We can never look at it like that. So shout out to Tariq Nasheed, and I can appreciate his posts that he's making. He's still continuing to post and bring light to this issue. And after his video, I noticed that Dr. Umar, I think, came and made a video. And I was a little bit shocked with Dr. Umar Johnson's response, because he said some very interesting things, but the main theme of his video was that it was some nigga shit. He described Nipsey's murder as some nigga shit. Honestly, when he said it, I laughed. I chuckled a little bit, and then I had to catch myself, and I was just like, okay. And I watched the entire video, but then I'm thinking, I was just waiting on him to add a more enlightened perspective, because we know Dr. Umar Johnson is pretty much in tune with politics, right? Race politics, and how it impacts African American community. So I was looking for him to speak from that perspective, but he didn't get into it. And it wasn't so much what he said that struck me as it was why he was saying it. I'm like, why did he not conceptualize this killing in the context of a racial political framework? Why didn't he go there when he normally does go there? I mean, we know that's like his main narrative as it relates to anything that affects African American community, whether it is police brutality, whether it's something that's affected the educational system. That's like his specialty in education, with the overrepresentation, overdiagnosis of African Americans with ADHD, children with ADHD. That's his primary focus. He talks about a number of things, and he always ties it back to the dominant white European racist political structure in which we live in, the greater social context. But the fact that this particular event that happened March 31st with the killing of Nipsey, he did not link it to anything political. He reduced it to gang violence, and I was a bit disheartened by that, because I felt like Dr. Umar Johnson, of course, he's a leader. You know, he's someone that we look up to. He's someone that we all expect to have an awareness, you know, to be in tune, to stand for us, you know, to speak out, because he has a voice. He has a very strong voice, a very powerful voice, that when he speaks, people listen. And so, in a time such as this, a very trying time, a very difficult time, that we need strong black male voices to speak out on behalf of a murder. I mean, I feel like something is missing here on his behalf. And like I said, it made me wonder why. Feel free for you. I want you guys to comment, share your thoughts on this. But it made me wonder, why did he drop the ball? And why did he just only reduce it to gang violence? Now, this video covers Dr. Umar Johnson, Tariq Nasheed, and Brother Polight's response. So although I feel that there was a gap, like there is a gap in information or perspective that Dr. Umar Johnson left out, I feel that his perspective is also valuable, because I agree with what he said in the video. I just feel like he's missing a piece, as most of us are who only want to reduce it to gang violence. I feel like, yes, it's gang violence, and yes, it's also bigger than that. So it's not to say who's right or wrong in terms of Dr. Umar Johnson, Tariq Nasheed, and Brother Polight's response. I believe they are all right. But I do believe that Dr. Umar Johnson, he missed a piece. Yes, I agree, Tate. I believe that Dr. Umar Johnson was being honest, but I still that you can still be honest and still miss a piece. So he zeroed in. What Dr. Umar Johnson did in his video was he zeroed in on the issue from a micro level. You know, there's different ways we can conceptualize a problem. We can look at it from a social level, a macro level, which is what sociologists do, or we can bring it down to a micro level. And he basically reduced it to gang violence. And an issue, I mean, it's still a social issue, right? But it stems from something much greater than that. And so I think that it's important to not just zero in, let's say, on an individual or a group of individuals, and forget and neglect the bigger picture, that the social context in which those individuals live, you know, the things that could be impacting those individuals to commit such act. And like I said, I asked myself, I wonder why he reduced it to that. And not just him, but people in general. And I basically came up with this, that I think that it's much easier to put the blame on a handful of people, to hold a handful of people responsible, as opposed to saying that it's attributed to, you know, a much greater cause, such as a lot of you guys are saying a conspiracy, but I don't call it a conspiracy. You know, we know that the government has a long history of orchestrating certain events that leave individuals dead, and there's unexplained answers. Like, that's what I'm talking about. That piece is missing. And yes, it's a theoretical perspective, but we can't neglect it for people to just say, oh no, it has nothing to do with that. I think that we are too quick. Like, we came to that conclusion way too quick based on what the news media said. We just took what the news media said and ran with it, and it's like, okay, that's just some nigga shit. That's just gang violence. But it doesn't quite make any sense. Like, it doesn't, we know that there are missing pieces to the story. There's so many unanswered questions. And it's easier to do that because in order to conceptualize this killing and attribute it in the context of this, the greater social context, and to attribute it to an orchestrated event led by the white racist power structure, we will have to do something about it. And I even made a post to say that, where is the fight in us? Like, where, why are we just sitting back, just accepting things for how it is? Even when people have determined that, oh, it's gang violence, it's almost like, okay, it's gang violence, and that's it. Like, where is the fight in us? Where is the energy and the strength for us to say, all right, enough is enough, and we need to do something about this? I think it's much easier to say, oh, we just accept it as gang violence. Sabir says it's not gang violence unless dude was given a green light on Nipsey. It doesn't make any sense, you guys. The fact that he was killed at the age of 33, there are too many factors, and this is what it means to be conscious. A lot of y'all think it's a joke to be conscious, but there is a such thing as having a third eye, having an intuitive sense, to be able to see beyond what's presented in front of you, to be able to have an inkling of an idea that resonates deep within your soul, to know that this is more than just gang violence. This is more than just gang violence. People are so used to gang violence. People are so used to even black people being killed by the powers that be. Like, we're so used to it that we've given up. That's what it seems like. We've given up. Like, there's no protest. There's no search for justice. We just say, oh, okay, another black man killed another nigga, basically, and just let it go. Like, how can y'all rest easy at night knowing that this happened? And going back to Dr. Umar Johnson, because I ain't done yet. I ain't done. I got a little bit of time to talk about this topic. I feel that because he even admitted this in his video, because he's been attacked by members of the African American community, people from within his own community, he knows what that is like firsthand. He can vouch to what that experience is like, that's how it's easy for him to just chop it up as some nigga shit, some self-hate, and to remove the white man from it, because he's been attacked so much by his own people. Although he speaks against the white power structure a lot, and a lot of social issues that he talks about, he attributes them to the white power structure. He made a deliberate decision and choice to not even mention the white power structure as it relates to Nipsey's death, his killing, his murder. That's a deliberate decision that he made, and I think that is directly connected to the fact that he himself is going through a similar situation where he is being attacked by members of the black community, because we all know that he is in the process of building a school for African American boys. And through all of these years, from the day one when he began the fundraiser, he had been under attack. People are accusing him of stealing the black community's money, the donations that were sent in. They're still accusing him. He's purchased a school, and yet they are still saying that he's a fraud. And I only can imagine how painful that can be, to be a man, an upright man who has good intentions for the black community, and yet your own people want to bring you down. And they don't just necessarily want to bring him down or destroy his character or his reputation. Like, they're trying to assassinate his career, what he worked so hard for. Controlling our own narrative, he wouldn't just turn himself in, let alone shoot Nipsey and double back on Nip. Whereas a female who took the picture with Nip, and this was someone in his camp. Yes, exactly. We'll go get back to that. But as far as Dr. Umar Johnson is concerned, like, it makes sense why he would want to focus on black people, because that's what he's dealing with himself. He's dealing with being attacked by members of his own community that he still has not gotten justice for. You know, so it makes sense that he can vicariously look at this situation, look at Nipsey's death, and see himself in Nipsey's shoes, and be able to conceptualize and interpret the cause of Nipsey's murder through his own experience and through his own lens of being attacked by members of the black community. Currently, not just in the past, but currently, that he has not gotten justice for. It's ongoing, you know? Like, something needs to be done about these people who are making false claims against Dr. Umar Johnson, to the extent that it is affecting not only his credibility, but his career. You know, like, this man was at risk for losing his credentials because of the false claims. And to see that someone would go to that extent, if you're willing to assassinate someone's image and their career, then you might as well assassinate them as a human being and just kill them, because it's not much difference, you know? The fact that he has to live through this probably is actually worse, you know, because the school still isn't open yet. And the fact that he already purchased a school and he's doing such a great thing to bring about change for the black community, and you have people who are unrelentingly attacking this man, it's sad. Like, it's hurtful. And something needs to be done about it. So I can see how he can identify with Nipsey in that respect and say, you know what, this is just some nigga shit. You know, because where is the white hand in this, you know? And I think that he wants justice himself, for himself. And to that extent, he also wants justice for Nipsey as it relates to the killer that they have, you know, on the news, the face of the man that they have on the news, Eric Holder. Something needs to be done. And it's hard, you guys, because the difficult part is that when you know who the real enemy is, right? You know that the real enemy is the system. It's difficult to face the real enemy, especially when the real enemy is as big as it is. It's systemic. It's not just an individual. It's a whole power structure. That's way much more difficult to confront. Then on top of that, I think it's also easier to just point the blame at a group of individuals or your own people, because you have a stronger connection to them. You're directly connected to them. And it's even more hurtful when the pain that you experience is inflicted by someone that you know, as opposed to someone that you aren't directly connected to. You know? It's like if you're in war, you expect your enemy to attack you, but you don't expect your own soldiers from your own camp to attack you. You don't expect that to come from your own people, and so it hurts a lot more because you trusted them. Black people already don't have a trust for them. Already don't have a trust. I mean, so when things are done against us from the government, it's just like, okay. But when you can put your trust in your own people and they inflict pain against you, that's a different kind of hurt. And so that, being that that hurt is so substantial and it's so fresh and it's so close to your heart, you need, it needs to be alleviated immediately. That's like where you direct your attention to first, as opposed to this big power structure outside of that, you know, which for a lot of people, they feel powerless, you know. It's like, who can defeat the government? Who can defeat the system? People, the community has been trying to fight the system for many years to no avail. It's still the same. Yes, laws have been changed, but we still live in the same story, same shit, different day and age. It's the same stuff. So I think it has gotten to a point where black community just has given up. We're really confronting the system, and like I say, it's just easier. It's easier to say, oh, it's gang violence, and just put the blame on an individual, than to try to really think and problem solve this thing through, to figure out, how did this happen? Like, how did it really happen? It's much easier. So yes, Dr. Umar Johnson's response video really, it touched me, you know. Just like, okay, he has a point, and we do need to stop this black on black crime. We do. This black on black hate. But I think, like Tariq Nasheed and Brother Polight pointed to, is much bigger than that. And so when I came across Brother Polight's response, I was really inspired. I think I actually shed a tear. That's how inspired I was. Like, I think I shed a few tears because it touched me. And I'm like, wow. It's like who you expected to stand for the black community didn't, in terms of Dr. Umar Johnson. And I didn't even expect that Brother Polight would go there, but he did. Why? Because Brother Polight kind of been living his own, like, world. Like, he been kind of living in the fantasy. You know, he lives in Hollywood, California. I actually had the opportunity to meet Brother Polight, you know, last year in Hollywood, before I moved from Hollywood to South Central. And I have much respect for him, Tariq Nasheed, and Dr. Umar Johnson. You know, but yeah, he's kind of been living in his own thing, and he even admitted that he kind of took a back seat from confronting and addressing these social political issues that affect the black community. You know, and sometimes you need to, as an activist, you need to take a breath, you know, a breather from this, because it can be overwhelming. It can be tiring, you know, to day in and day out go through this. That's why Dr. Umar Johnson, his father actually, Jamal Johnson, he tricked me on April Fool's Day. He sent me this text talking about he's given up. He's not gonna, you know, fight for the black community anymore and not be an activist, you know, because he's tired and he's gonna just enjoy his retirement. And I believed it, and then he sent me a text. It was like April Fool's. But it's believable, because this shit, the journey is tiring, man. You have to sit up here and deal with people within your own community hating on you because you stand up against these issues. Then you got to sit up here and fight and defend yourself against white people and then other people from other races. Yes, it can be very tiring. So it's believable and kind of understandable, you know, why black people who are activists will just say, you know what, I'm taking a break from this. Let me pause. And at one point, Brother Polight, he said that he was doing that, you know. You have to kind of sometimes clear your head for your own well-being. You know, we talk about mental health, like your mental health is important. It's called self-care. You know, you got to take care of yourself. And if that means taking a step away from the trenches, then you got to step back, you know, so you can replenish yourself. And it was just refreshing to see that, okay, he ain't left us. Like Brother Polight, he didn't leave us. He came back and he delivered in his video. You know, he spoke out, and a lot of people, they undermine the importance of speaking on these issues and calling things as they are, but that's the first step. We have to enlighten people because there's so much information, misinformation going out there to the public across social media about what's happening and shaping the minds, and people, their minds need to be reframed. Like, we need to reframe our thinking on what happened, because if not, it's different. These are the reactions that come from that. If we believe that this is just gang violence and we completely ignore the systemic part of it, we completely ignore the role that the government could possibly have played in the murder of Nipsey, then we give them permission to do it. But if we also ignore the role that gang violence plays and ignorant just black nigga shit plays, then we also give each other permission to continue to kill us. So that's why I say all perspectives are important. It's not that Tariq Nasheed and Brother Polight are right and Dr. Umar Johnson is wrong. I think they're all three are right. And they all three are bringing something very important to the table that we do need to focus on, both perspectives. You know, it's not about this one is right, this one is wrong. All three are right. The theory or the perspective that is gang violence, that's completely right. And the theory or perspective that the government played a role, or the Illuminati, or some secret society, or whatever you want to call it, a bigger hand, as Muhammad says, is responsible for this. It is. And we all need to take that into account, so that we all can be very vigilant in how we move, how we go about things. Like, it's important to be educated. It's important to not just reduce it to gang violence. Or it's also important to not just say, oh, it's the white man. You know, because we neglect the fact that, yeah, there are informants within our own community. There are people within our own community that are responsible for atrocities like this. You know, we take our own selves out, you know. But also know the other major players that's involved. I want you guys to feel free to share your thoughts below on this. Like I say, I live directly in that community. I'm very much impacted by what happened. I didn't know Nipsey personally, but of course we all have seen him, you know, on TV. We know that he was married to Lauren London. He has a mother, you know, he has family that he left behind. He has children that he left behind. You know, he's one of us. That's the biggest, most important thing to take from this, is that he is us. He's a reflection of us. And so our attitude towards his murder, whatever the attitude may be, is a reflection of how we see ourselves, man, how we feel about ourselves. And if you dismiss it, and you dismiss his murder, like, oh, he's just another nigga that got killed from the hood, how would you feel? That is my question. Because it's interesting for Dr. Umar Johnson and other people, specifically Dr. Umar Johnson, because he is a leader. He is a person that would like to believe that the government is in control of the attacks that have been made against him, even though the attacks have come directly from black people. Who's really behind this, you know? And he would like to believe that it's the government. He even mentioned the FBI. They have a hand at, you know, the defamation of his character and his career, and trying to just destroy his plan to effect change in the African American community. But when it comes to a rapper, another activist in the black community, he wasn't just a rapper or a gang member. He's a community activist, a political activist, effecting change in the black community. Dr. Umar Johnson is not the only one. There are many others, but it's like Dr. Umar Johnson's narrative is as if, oh, he's the only one doing things for the black community, when he is not. And so I'm wondering, could Dr. Umar Johnson be experiencing cognitive dissonance? Because if in his mind, prior to Nipsey's death, he believes that he's the only one that is effecting change, and he's the only, you know, significant black leader in the community, and then boom, you have a man, Nipsey, who was doing all these great things. He was working to reverse gentrification in that neighborhood. by putting in a low-income housing in that neighborhood to attract more black residents, fueling the economy for the black community, doing a number of things. He has a long track record of doing positive things in the black community. But if Dr. Umar Johnson sees himself as the only one, and then he's confronted with this new evidence that there are other black leaders in the community that are doing great things, then he's going to try to dismiss that and say, oh, well, it's not, his murder isn't that significant. Like, it's not that big to assume that it was the government that was behind this. Because we know if a significant figure is behind a person's murder or, a death, then it escalates to an assassination. It makes it a bigger deal than, oh, it's just gang violence and a black man killing another black man. That basically makes this man a martyr, It makes him bigger than what the media is trying to reduce him to in terms of just being a member of a gang. It basically, to see it as a government assassination, to see it as an issue bigger than just gang violence, is to pay tribute to the purpose, the magnitude of his purpose, and why he died. The purpose of what he was doing is to try to say that it is to reduce it to gang violence, is to minimize the magnitude of his purpose. But meanwhile, Dr. Umar Johnson, he magnifies his purpose. He sees himself as like a second coming of Jesus Christ, for the black community. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I have much respect for him. But I don't think that there's just one so-called Jesus Christ for the black community, or one savior for the black community. Like, there are a number of people who are doing great things, who risked their lives, who have died. I mean, there's a whole history of people who have lost their lives in bringing about change for the black community. So I think it's sometimes very selfish for a person to think that they're the only one. And then when another black leader, a community activist, is shot and killed, then you just want to reduce it to gang violence. What if when Dr. Umar Johnson, because I'm sure his day is coming, I mean, God forbid, we expect him to live a long, blessed life, but he himself is even concerned about physical threats, to his own survival. And just, let's say he is shot and killed, or he mysteriously pops up dead, and people would just say, oh, well, we just know it's just some nigga shit, right? It's just another hating ass black person that killed him, and we just reduce it to that, as if his dying was kind of like in vain, as if he didn't die for a cause. No, he died for a cause. When you get killed, when you are assassinated, as Martin Luther King was, and you are killed for a specific cause that is going to bring about major change for a large number of people, that is big. But it becomes small when you just chop it up to say that your death was due to just a hating person within your community. It makes your death average, and it minimizes what you died for. It's sad to say that. It's sad to see that people can be that selfish, that people cannot think outside and look outside themselves to see that there are other leaders in the black community who are doing great things. It's not just one person. It's a lot of people who are putting their lives on the line. And when one of us just pops up missing, don't just minimize it to say, oh, this person just died of a health issue, or they just died, for regular stuff, gang violence. Because gang violence has become so regular to the black community. Just like, oh, that's just gang violence. I mean, look at the response, how people, when the media has reduced it to gang violence, black people are like, okay, and we just left it alone. But if it was determined that the media, let's say the media said, oh, well, which they're not going to say, definitely not going to say that. But if they go to say, oh, it was due to an orchestrated event, then it would have a totally different response. We know it would. So that is just my perspective and my response to these 3 videos that I've seen, which I think they were great videos. There was a lot of passion that Brother Polight put in his video. I have much respect for that. Tariq Nasheed, he not letting it go. He's holding to his perspective. And we all know, like, we don't need to lose our consciousness or our conscience, because it's almost as if I even said this in my post, that the black community, our conscience is sleeping. Where is our conscience to know that it's something else going on? This is not just some isolated event of gang violence. This is something greater than that. This man died at 30. There's no coincidence that he got killed at 33 years old, a day before he was about to join with LAPD in a news conference against gang violence. Interesting. He had all these different projects that he was working on. That's not a coincidence, y'all. It's not just gang violence, and the fact that within 48 hours they knew like who did it that quick. And then even what the person said earlier about, okay, the getaway driver, right? Where is she at? Why haven't they arrested her? Where is her video testimony? You know, like, to me, it's too many missing pieces for us just to say, oh yeah, he did it. And I think it's even more damaging to blame an innocent black person who could have possibly had nothing to do with it, to say, just to put the blame on that person. But then there are sources that say, okay, well, people that witnessed the murder were there and they identified Eric Holder as a suspect, and so he did do it. It just doesn't make any sense, especially considering that he had just been released from jail, and they say he's a known informant. That right there is enough information to say that he's working with the government. This was an orchestrated event. But you know what? This murder really, it touched my heart. It really impacted me. And I had said I was going to go to the memorial. I was going to go, and visit the store. But I live very close. Like, I can literally walk there. That's how close I live. It's not that far from where I live. A good 25-minute walk, and I'll be there. But I don't know. I feel like I'll be so much heavy emotion. Just even talking about this is really difficult for me to talk about. So I know visiting, it's just going to be too much heavy emotion. And I'm upset because I don't like the black community's response to this. I don't like that we have dropped the ball, and I don't like that there are black community leaders who have dropped the ball and just like dismissing it as gang violence, and that's it. That can't be the end of the story. But I do have to go. I will catch you guys later. Feel free to continue the discussion below.